So here we are in downtown Portland, Oregon. You've probably heard that Portland has a lot of challenges and is being run by a terrible liberal government that turns its back on crime and vandalism and homelessness. Those are all true. Portland suffers from mismanagement and has for years now, and because of that, lots of bad people are coming and lots of good people are leaving. Say what you want about Portland's politics and crime, but it is a really pretty and charming place, despite a lot of the damage that's been done by vandals and the homeless stain on the city. And on this drive, we're going to take a tour through a lot of downtown Portland. We're lucky because the day I chose this drive was a nice one. It was evening in late October, right when the city's maple trees were beginning to fall, creating a neat orange carpet. Here's the map of the route we'll take. Now, I know a lot of you want to see the homeless tents, and we'll get to that part. And we're also going to see the part of town that's in tatters from the looting, too. But I have to say, while driving around downtown Portland, I was surprised that the city wasn't as destroyed or chaotic or overrun with tents like I thought it would be. Oh, I mean, it's a thing, but it wasn't as bad as you hear about on the news, at least when I was here. But on this drive, you're going to see lots of windows broken out and graffiti and homeless people. But Portland's had some time to recover from the seemingly endless protests, where the a-holes battled with cops and ruined a big chunk of downtown. The city's also actively trying to clean up all the bum poop and the needles, and has begun to push some of the homeless encampments out of downtown and into surrounding areas. So you and I went downtown, we walked around a little bit. I have to say, again, I've been to many terrible downtowns. I had been in Oakland 4 days prior to showing up in Portland. And that's on another level scary, where you kind of like can't let your car down and every little twig snap and every shadow, you're kind of like, what's going on? You can feel the negative energy. Downtown Portland has that little area that you have on Burnside down by Chinatown that's got some homeless people. And I even walked right through there at midnight and strolled through, and I was chatting with people. I mean, downtown Portland, it's not bad at all. Yeah, you've got some graffiti and you've got some broken stuff and from all the idiot protesters, but Portland gets a really bad rap from everybody.
Absolutely.
And it's actually a pretty nice place.
Like we were talking to that bartender, and like I've been saying the whole time on my channel and to everyone else, the news made that whole protest and riot thing seem like the whole city was engulfed in flames. It was like a 4-block square area. That was it. Everywhere else was perfectly fine. It's weird.
And Los Angeles, nobody will ever beat Los Angeles with the amount of tents and homeless and strung out people walking around. Portland, I was expecting to see blocks and blocks, and yet there are several blocks in one area of downtown over by Chinatown that has a lot of homeless people. It's just they're spread out further from the downtown core than they are downtown.
They're spread out pretty good under our underpasses. Just like any major city, you got a bunch of tent cities underneath the freeways and all that. But yeah, Portland is nothing compared to like the Tenderloin in San Francisco and Skid Row in Los Angeles. It's nothing like that. But people want to talk about how it's the absolute worst thing. I think it's because we had, if you take Los Angeles as a city as far as beauty and how well it was maintained, let's say back in the 80s and 90s, Los Angeles was here, Portland was here. And now, with all the homeless, Portland's down to here. And it's just we've gone further down than the other ones had to go. You know what I mean? That's kind of a weird way to explain it. But we've dropped further than other cities have because we were so nice before. I guess that's the best way to explain it. And so it's now all big drama. It sucks, but it's not as bad as they make it sound.
Yeah, I mean, so can you give people an idea on how Portland's changed in the last 10 years? So that they can kind of understand.
So I used to come up here and visit all the time in the 90s when I was in the military and stuff, and it was a lot different then. And then when I moved up here in 2010, we had homeless, and we had it was almost like a hippie homeless thing. They were musicians, whatever, kids trying to get by, and they ended up on the street with the occasional homeless situation. Well, as the years progressed, I'd say around 2017, you could see there was a change. It started getting worse. By 2018, it was really bad. And a lot of that had to do with prices going up. People ended up on the street, couldn't afford apartments anymore. And then, of course, the pandemic hit and it just blew up. But yeah, that's the biggest change. I mean, Portland is still a great city and there's still a lot of things to do and a lot of nice places. It's just we got this, it's almost like we got a wart on our face that needs to be fixed, and we'll get back to the beauty that we once were. Does that answer your question?
So how are you gonna fix that problem? How are you gonna get that ward off?
How to get that wart off your face? Well, they've said that they're going to start moving people off the streets. That's one of the biggest problems. So every city's going to have homeless people underneath the freeways and stuff like that, like I'd said. But they've gotten so bad here that they're just pitching a tent on the sidewalk throughout this one, well, actually most of the city. You can find pockets of it, but that Chinatown area is where it's really bad, where they've just set up full-on little cities on the sidewalks. And it's around businesses and it's around apartment buildings, and those businesses are suffering. Nobody wants to go down there. It's just a horrible situation. So they've started to set up these areas where homeless people go camp, and they're trying to get these people off the sidewalks in front of these businesses. And I mean, it's a long process. You're dealing with human beings that, probably have some other situation, some other issues going on besides being homeless. There's a reason they became homeless in a lot of cases. So they're starting to move these people to these like safe zones, as they call them, and hopefully get them off the street. And maybe that'll help. Maybe that'll help some of these businesses come back, more tax dollars, more money to help these people, get them going to where they need to go, or get them into an apartment, whatever is the case. But they're working on it. They started doing it a couple months ago. I haven't seen much movement on it, but they're working on it now.
Yeah, I'd say I strolled around after you left. I went into the Pearl district and wandered around for a little bit, made some friends, and wandered back up to Portland State. I mean, I was wandering around for about an hour alone. Never felt even close to anything that was dangerous down there.
Oh, no. Yeah. I mean,
it's just a nice, charming city, I have to say.
It is a nice city, and it is a great city. It's got problems like every other city. We just have a major problem right now, which is the homeless, and now we have a little spike in shootings. That's about it. Every city's gone through problems like this. I don't care what state it's in. Every city's got a problem. Just ours gets blasted on the news right now, mainly because we had the riots and all that other stuff. So that's why it seems worse than it is. We're just on blast in the last couple of years. I'm not trying to say it's this charming, perfect nirvana here. It's got its problems, but it's just made to seem a lot worse than it is.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I when I was in Oakland, I even said the other day, I was like, I thought I was going to come in here and meet a bunch of strung out junkies, and I met some pretty smart people over there in Oakland at the homeless camps. But when I went over to San Francisco, these people are nuts, man.
Oh yeah, it's a lot worse up there. It's like I told you, don't go down there because that's the worst part of the city, I guess you could say. There's a lot safer places. You just put yourself up for a little danger. Again, nothing compared to the Tenderloin or Skid Row. It's just not as safe. But it looks like you got out of there unscathed, so it's not that bad.
Here's where all the rioting happens that you see on TV. Based on news reports, you'd think the whole city was up in flames and gutted out, but it's actually just one small part of downtown that's about 5 blocks long. And until there's another overreaction to something that happens here, this riot zone's pretty peaceful and quiet. Too bad it can't stay this way all the time, but vandals and criminals and idiots can't seem to remain civil. Sadly, they're going to jack this part of town up all over again. Now here's where a big part of the homeless gather downtown. It's in an area off of Burnside, near Portland's Chinatown. These blocks and blocks of downtown have been overtaken by tents, and it's an area that kind of ruins a whole section of downtown. When I was here, it was all mostly contained to one area. Don't get me wrong, the homeless spill out into the surrounding blocks and leave trash everywhere and harass people and cause issues, and they break a lot of windows too. And almost all bathrooms in the area have a keypad to get in to prevent homeless people from using area bathrooms to do what homeless people do in there. But it's not really that dangerous here in downtown's tent city, at least to me. Sure, it looks bad, but I walked around this area at night and it was actually pretty quiet. It was like a lot of the homeless people were all given sedatives or something. And the maple leaves on the sidewalks certainly helped cover up a lot of the grimy homeless mess too. You can see a lot more of this in another video I did that only covered Portland's homeless problem. And when you drive around other parts of the city, it's clear that it is a big problem. I don't know if you caught that, but that lady back there was smoking crack in her tent. That's sad. That is not a tent, it's art. They've just destroyed big parts of downtown. Look at that. Just terrible, Portland. Terrible. A lot of people come. So Portland's changed clearly. What? How has Portland changed since you were younger?
Yeah, it's changed a lot actually. Culturally, it's changed a lot. I grew up sort of on the west side of Portland, a little bit outside of the city major. And then I lived outside of Portland for a couple of years on the East Coast. And when I came back in 2015, I was like, there's something different here. And I think it's mostly related to the amount. So Portland's always had a pretty steady stream of people relocating there, especially from California. And just cheaper. There's more water. It's nice. But I would say like in the last, 10 years, there's been people from all over the country who have been drawn to Portland, ranging for reasons anywhere from political, connections to just wanting to be in a more beautiful place to it became really trendy after that show Portlandia came out. I think that show took a lot of things about Portland culture and made them very fun, and Portlanders are so quirky and weird. And I mean, I didn't even know I was quirky and weird until I saw that show, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess people think this is cool. And because of that, those people coming in, it has actually really changed a lot of the just day-to-day culture of Portlanders. I would say that Portland's always been a fairly liberal city. Well, it's a liberal city, but also very conservative, like any place. As soon as you get outside of Portland city major, there's just a lot of people on the conservative side. It's just how it is. But I think with people moving here for wanting to be amongst people who are like-minded, it's really pushed Portland into this more progressive left sort of city. And that's caused a lot of friction, just a lot of friction with other Oregonians specifically. And I found personally, just in my conversations with people who are not from here originally, they don't, and this isn't like any hate on them, but they just don't realize that if it wasn't for Portland and maybe like Eugene and Corvallis, Oregon would be a red state. And there is just sort of a lack of understanding of like what the culture of Oregon and the Pacific Northwest is in general. I'm not saying it's like a good culture or a bad culture. It's just there's a lot of clashing there with ideology and expectation for how things are going to move politically. Yeah.
So by changed a lot, it's just become more liberal. I mean, is that like the most of it? Is the vibe different around there? I mean, the crime is clearly higher.
Well, the crime has definitely been on the rise. I think even since 2019, before 2020, it was sort of steadily rising. There's a lot of reasons for that. It's definitely, not just one thing. After 2020, I mean, crime just went up considerably. My boyfriend's had, since he's lived here, he's not from here, but since he's lived here, he's had, at least $30,000 worth of personal assets stolen from him, even while living in neighborhoods that you wouldn't think that would happen. So, and through his profession, he also knows many people who work in the trade industries who have suffered similar vandalism and crimes against like their businesses. So that's been really difficult. I would say it's maybe once where it was a place where it was, pretty acceptable to be, who you are and be a little bit quirky. It's become a little bit more hostile if you don't fit into a specific quirky or certain, way of thinking. I run into quite a few people who are from here of all ages, anywhere from like my age to like older. And they've all said, we don't feel at home here anymore. We feel like the people that have moved here have a different expectation for this city, and we're not really part of that. And that's consistent. I hear that consistently from people who are born and raised here. So it's a little bit more of like, I think a feel. It's obviously not like some hard factual, like, let me just show you exactly what this is. It's just more of like a sentiment from people. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I know why people go to LA, because it's warm and they give homeless folks and those down on their luck free stuff. So everyone's like, let's go to California and party. Like, weed's legal.
Yeah.
You get free stuff. We can all hang out. What's the draw to Portland specifically that you get that type of people crowd coming through?
Well, people who come here are they're looking for, well, there's a couple, I've met like mostly two different people. There's the group of people that come here because they think city life is, very like quaint and unique. Portland, compared to other cities in the US, Portland's not a huge city, and it still has a very neighborhood feel to it. Prior to 2020, there was a lot of really awesome restaurants, and like food culture had become really big here. There's just a lot of unique shopping opportunities. People are really big into thrifting out here. So, that's really cool to people. And then you have the other group of people who move here because of outdoor recreation. You are so close to so many things. You're only an hour from Mount Hood. You're only 3 hours from like Bend and Bachelor and that whole area. The entire Northern Cascades is just filled with things to do. There's rock climbing, there's rivers, there's lakes. You're, like an hour and a half from the ocean. So people definitely move out here for that. Also just the grandeur of how beautiful it is here. It's gorgeous. The Pacific Northwest, there's really no place more beautiful than this, except for maybe like New England, but it's amazing. So people will definitely come out here for that. I have to just like throw this out. One thing that we've noticed, just people who are from here, is just the effects of environmental changes on this area as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but like fire seasons have just become, in California, they've been pretty serious for a while. Well, now in Oregon and in Washington, it's getting really serious. Where just like millions of acres of forest are expected to burn every year.
Mm-hmm.
I just talked to somebody who's from Estacada, which is out, I'd say it's like maybe an hour drive from where I'm at in Portland. And, they've been dealing with the effects of our 5-year drought that, people in Portland aren't necessarily aware of. She told me their well's been dry for a good part of the year, just not enough snowpack for it to fill. So, once you kind of get outside of city major, like there's a lot of serious, just like effects on the communities outside of this area.
Hey guys, if you learned something new about America or what it's like to live in America, great! You should think about subscribing and turning on your notifications. You can also click one of these videos or playlists for more. You can also now buy my songs on iTunes and other formats. Click the link in the description. Thanks for watching. And remember, while we all might have different views, we should all be nice to each other and try to make the U.S. a better place in a positive way.
This is Sage, Nick's manager. This has been a Corner House Entertainment production.
And are you looking to move and need advice? I do consulting. That's right. I'll sit down and talk about where the next perfect place for you and your family should be. I do it all the time. Together, let's find you a new home that's safe and checks all your boxes. You can get my email in the description to find out how I can help you find your perfect relocation.